Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 167 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Man, I'm doing good. How about you, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing good too, man.
Yeah.
We got to have 4 mans in there.
Got to get him in there.
The more mans, the better.
Exactly.
It's a raining mans. Hallelujah.
I know that's your favorite song.
I changed it, though, to mans just for you.
I hear you singing a lot. That's what I'm saying.
Been doing a lot of binging lately.
Have you?
Yep.
You a binger?
I'm a binger.
Yeah.
I got that Disney Plus for my daughter.
Yeah.
And then found out that I actually liked it. There's some good stuff on there. Been binging the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
And Star Wars, Pirates of the Caribbean.
So you're watching them from the beginning to the end.
Sure.
Yeah. That's how you like to do things.
I'll watch them in order. That is how binging works, right?
Well, true.
You do realize that.
That is the key, of
binging.
Binging.
Gibbs, we continue to have an amazing amount of Patreon support. Just can't thank everybody enough. So let's give some Patreon shout outs.
All right.
We had Jessica Miller.
Hey, Jessica.
Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Stacy Watson.
Hey, how's Holmes doing?
Nicole Ali.
Hey, Nicole.
Jason Elias.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
Susan Hoffman.
Hey, the Bengals are in the house.
The Bengals.
Yeah.
Sandy Grayson.
Hey, Sandy.
Karen B.
What's going on, Karen B?
Cindy Crocker.
What's going on, Cindy?
Sarah McKinney.
Hey, McKinney.
Caroline.
Well, thanks, Carolyn.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah.
Sarah.
What's going on, Sarah?
Joey Juicebox.
Hey, what's going on, Juice Box?
Mary Wilson.
Hey, Mary.
Ann O'Donovan.
Thank you, Ann.
Dion C.
Hey, Dion.
Adam Armstrong.
Hey, Adam.
Jared Moore.
Thank you, Jared.
Tia Steffen.
Hey, Tia.
Trisha Brooks.
What's going on, Trisha?
Rachel Phillips.
Hey, Rachel.
Franklin Rouse.
Franklin. It's a good, strong name.
Strong.
Franklin.
Jamie Bell.
Hey, Jamie.
Amber Graham.
Amber.
And Karen Aleo.
What's going on, Leo?
So appreciate all that new support.
Yeah.
If we go back into the vault, Gibbs. This week we selected Kay Cole.
Awesome. Thanks, Kay.
An amazing supporter, been with us a long time.
Yeah.
We also had some great PayPal donations. Emma Cronin.
Emma.
Elizabeth Skull.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Denise McGuire.
Oh, Denise.
And Peter Paulson.
Really?
Yep. So big thanks to all those folks as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Right now, we have a new episode out on True Crime All the Time. We're talking about Gene Harris and the shooting of the Scarsdale diet creator, Herman Tarnow.
A very famous book.
Very famous book. Actually, a very famous or infamous case as well. I mean, this is a case that received a lot of coverage back in the early 80s. And it's one of those cases that, I really think comes down to who you believe in making the decision as to whether this was an accidental shooting,
right?
As Gene claimed it was,
sure,
or a murder,
yeah,
as the state and the prosecution claimed.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. So make sure you check that out. Don't forget about Stitcher Premium. That's where you can find all of our unsolved episodes older than 6 months. We've got some really good ones out there.
Really good ones.
And they have that 30-day free trial, so there's nothing to lose. But Gibbs, I think besides, our episodes, there's a lot of good content on Stitcher Premium, ad-free.
Criminology's out there.
Criminology's out there, but a lot of other really good podcasts. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're actually talking about some deaths very close to where we live in the county that we live that neither of us were aware of at all in a 12-day period. In January of 1973, Montgomery County, Ohio had 4 very tragic deaths that have remained unsolved today. And even though there have been some tie-ins between the series of murders, investigators have not been able to solve them. This case starts on January 13th, 1973 in Harrison Township at the home of Jack and Gloria Buck and their 2 children, 6-year-old Tracy and 5-year-old Scott. Their home was located at 2020 Arthur Avenue. On the morning of the 13th, Jack left his family early in the morning to go up to one of his favorite hunting spots in Darke County, just about 15 miles west of Phillipsburg, Ohio.
I know exactly where that area is. Very familiar. You know, I grew up in this area, so I know exactly the spots that they're talking about.
Well, that's good. You'll be able to lend a lot of expertise into this case.
As I always do.
As you always do.
Yeah.
So Jack was set to meet up with his best friends at the crack of dawn to go hunting. Later that morning, Gloria had her children playing outside in her front yard with their 12-year-old neighbor, Jenny Brown. Gloria asked Jenny if she wasn't busy, could she watch her two children around noon because a buyer for their TV was set to come look at it. But Jenny said she couldn't babysit because she was going shopping with her father around 11 a.m. Investigators know that the last person to speak to Gloria on this day was her normal babysitter, 17-year-old Patty Brown, Jenny's older sister. Gloria called Patty to see if she could watch the children that evening so she could go out, but Patty said she couldn't because she had been ill. While on the phone with Patty, Gloria said she had to go because someone was knocking on her front door. Gloria thought it was most likely the man who called to see the television that they were selling through the Trading Post. Gibbs, the Trading Post, is that something that they have everywhere?
Man, that's what we grew up with.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. I mean, I don't know if that's a nationwide publication or not.
I don't know if it's that or it's just regional, but man, I love going through the Trading Post.
You'd find all kinds of stuff.
Oh man, that's where you'd find your car. That's where you would find, you know, if you're in whatever. They had boats, motorcycles.
And pieces, parts. Yeah. You know, if you needed an obscure part, you'd find it in the Trading Post.
Everything. Fishing poles.
So apparently this man told Gloria that he would be by sometime around noon that day. Patty also told investigators that she heard Gloria over the phone calling her two children inside. And then about 3.5 hours went by. That's when Jenny Brown returned from her shopping trip with her father. She was excited about the new items she had purchased at the store, especially some new shoes. And she decided that she wanted to show her two friends and their mother the cool stuff she had bought.
Yeah, you're that way with shoes. You always want to show off your new shoes.
Yeah, because I get a new pair about once every 5 years. I want to show them off.
Look at my new shoes. I'm like, yeah, they look like their previous pair of shoes you had.
I do have a tendency to just keep buying the same pair, a new pair, a new version.
Yeah, they look good, man. Okay.
So Jenny walked over to the Buck household. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. But that was something Jenny was used to. She knew that sometimes they were busy in the back of the house. So Jenny opened up the door and she went inside the house. She didn't find anyone in the living room, kitchen, or even the family room. She called out for the family, but no one answered.
I think she thought, well, maybe they weren't home, but she was going to go ahead and check out the rest of the house and go through the bedrooms.
And it was in the last bedroom she looked where she found Gloria and the two young children lying on the floor dead, covered in blood.
She didn't waste any time, man. She got out of that house and she ran home.
Well, this is a 12-year-old girl witnessing, what had to have been an extremely horrific sight. You're right. She bolted. She also probably had to be, very scared, not knowing what was going on, not knowing if, somebody was still in the house.
Yeah.
So she ran home as fast as she could, yelling the whole way home. I think she was probably in shock. She was crying. She saw her sister Patty and told Patty that the Buck family was dead. Patty didn't believe her.
I think a lot of sisters and brothers wouldn't. They'd be like, what are you talking about? There's no way they're dead.
Yeah, well, Patty's 17.
Yeah.
Jenny's 12. First of all, you don't expect to hear that from anybody.
No.
That, hey, the whole family, down the street is dead. But I think you're right. The older sister probably thought, I don't know, what is this, a joke or
You're trying to trick me.
Something's going on here. But Patty went over and she peeked through the bedroom window and she saw exactly what her sister had described. So she ran home and she called the police. Police got on site quickly and they found the bodies of the 3 victims. These murders were savage. The killer forced Gloria to remove her clothes and then attacked her with a knife. She had several defensive wounds to her hands, arms, and body. She had been stabbed multiple times in her chest, piercing both her heart and lungs. The killer at some point moved on to the children. Before returning to Gloria, this person stabbed Tracy in her neck, cutting her carotid artery, and then proceeded to do the exact same thing with Scott.
This little kid's 5 and 6, man.
Yeah, very small. After that, the killer returned to Gloria, and it was almost as if this person's rage intensified.
Yeah.
Because the killer struck her in the head with a baseball bat.
Crushing her skull.
Yeah, literally crushed her skull in. But the killer wasn't done yet. Took out a .22 caliber handgun and shot Gloria in the head. The coroner was later able to remove the bullet from Gloria's brain, but there was no mention of a sexual assault, although some investigators believed that Gloria had been sexually assaulted. And Gibbs, while the investigators were still at the Buck home, Jack Buck returned.
What a scary sight that had to be.
Yeah, because you can imagine he's driving up the street in his car, and as he nears his house, he probably couldn't believe what he saw.
No.
His home surrounded by police, EMS. I think your heart would jump out of your chest at that point because something is seriously wrong. You don't know what it is, but it can't be good.
No, and he even told the Dayton Daily News, the local paper, initially he thought, man, somebody hit my kid. My son was out in the middle of the street. Somebody hit him and he's gone. And that's his initial thought. And I think, you would have a similar thought pulling. You would never think
that your whole family's been massacred.
Yeah,
no, you wouldn't think that. I get that, right? Accident, car accident. Maybe somebody fell, had a bad fall and hurt themselves and EMS had to be called. But nowhere in your darkest recesses would you think my whole family's been massacred and the police are out here investigating it.
Yeah. To the point as he runs up to the house to see what's going on, they grab him and they put him into the cruiser and they have to tell him, your whole family's dead.
Parents' worst nightmare. I mean, that's all you can say. I mean, to find out that, anyone in your family has been murdered, horrible. But to find out that your entire family is gone.
Yeah.
Life as you know it is gone.
Yeah. I mean, you left that morning feeling good, had a good time, probably hunting with your friends, coming back, going to tell the family about your day, to find out you can never talk to them ever again. They're gone.
So investigators had the tough task of informing Jack what had happened, but they also needed to question him, right? They needed to know where he had been. And he told them he had gone hunting that morning up in Dark County with friends. And it wasn't too hard for investigators to check out his alibi. And he was pretty quickly eliminated as a suspect in his family's murders. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood. They began questioning neighbors, but nothing really at all came from the canvassing of the neighborhood. So they focused on the 2 girls that had seen and found the bodies that day, Jenny and Patty. Investigators also found a shell casing, and Jack Buck told them that his Ruger was missing from his gun cabinet. And Gibbs, just 9 days after the triple homicides, investigators decided to arrest and charge 17-year-old Patty Brown with 3 counts of delinquency by reason of murder. Patty was in her senior year at Northridge High School at the time. It was also reported by the Dayton Daily News that at Northridge, Patty was in some classes for the mentally disabled. Investigators later said that Jenny made a sworn statement that her sister Patty had confessed to her that she had committed the brutal murders. And apparently it was said that the reason she did it was that the Bucks had not paid her for some babysitting time that she was owed. So police sent her off to juvenile detention where she would await her trial. So there's a lot to break down here.
That's a whole lot to break down.
You have a 17-year-old minor who in some way had some mental disabilities. Obviously, she's in these types of classes at Northridge High School. You have a statement from her 12-year-old sister.
Right.
That says, yeah, my older sister said she killed this entire family. And the reason she did it was because they didn't pay her for some babysitting.
Yeah. Doesn't add up.
It doesn't make sense at all.
No. And why would somebody, a 17-year-old, anybody over babysitting money decide to stab, slash, then grab a baseball bat? And then, you know what? I'm not done yet. Let me go into this gun cabinet. Let me get this Ruger out and then go shoot one bullet in the head. To me, it does. I mean, I can't imagine how that made sense to anybody.
No, not to say that it can never happen, because we know women can commit some very atrocious crimes.
Sure.
But to think that a 17-year-old girl would commit the murders in the way that we know they were committed.
Right.
It just doesn't add up. And for the reason that it was said they were committed, you're right, man. Just, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Yeah. And we're talking more about how that came about. Jenny saying what she said.
Right.
We'll get into that.
But before we do that, I think we need to focus in on the victims in this case. We don't have a ton of information, but we know that Jack and Gloria married in 1965, and they had their daughter, Tracy, on April 18th, 1966. Then Scott was born on March 8th, 1967. Both kids attended the John H. Morrison Elementary School. Tracy was in the first grade, and Scott was in kindergarten. Family said that both kids were just really good kids. Beautiful and cute. They loved to play together. They loved to play with other kids in the neighborhood. Jack told the local press days after the murders that Scott was very talkative and he could be a little ornery, as, little boys can be.
Sure.
And his little girl, Tracy, was the sweetest little thing. He said he loved them both dearly. His wife, Gloria, was only 26 years old at the time of her death, and she was happy with her life. She was a good mother. She loved her family. It was said that she was the glue that held the family together, and she loved her husband, Jack, very much. And that's not hard to believe, you know. Mothers very often are the glue that hold the family together. Just so tragic. I mean, when you look at, all murder is tragic, but when you look at a 26-year-old mother, a 6-year-old little girl, 5-year-old little boy,
gone,
senseless. So while Patty Brown was sitting in juvenile detention, awaiting her trial, on January 25th, 1973, this was just 12 days after the triple murders, something really big happened in the United States. We buried a president.
Yeah.
On that day, Lyndon B. Johnson. All schools across the country were closed on that day. At the Dearth family home out on Diamond Mill Road in Clay Township, 13-year-old Linda Dearth and her 17-year-old brother Robert were both excited not to have to go to school that day. Robert was a senior at Northmont High School, and Linda was a 7th grader at Northmont Junior High.
That's my high school.
That's where you went?
I did. That's where I graduated from.
That's who produced the Gibster?
That is.
They had an older brother, Maurice, who was away at college. So I mentioned the schools were closed that day, but businesses were not. So their father, Dwayne, and their mother, Betty, both had to go to work that day. Linda was still in her nightgown when her parents left for work. She had no reason to get dressed right away.
No school today. Why get dressed?
Hang out in your PJs.
Yeah, like you do every day.
That's true. Betty would later say that her last memory of her daughter was that morning with Linda, standing in the hallway with her in her long nightgown and the family cat trying to attack her little feet with every step she took. Linda had a clarinet contest the next day, so she told her mother that she would practice that later in the morning. Robert had recently placed an ad in the Trading Post to sell his 1966 Chevy Bel Air four-door and had parked the car at the end of the driveway near the road with a for sale sign on it. Here again, Trading Post.
Yeah. This place they lived on, Diamond Mill Road, was one of those country roads that the houses are sit kind of far back a little bit.
Which is why he would have needed to park it at the end of the driveway, right, or else nobody would have seen it.
Exactly. You're not back in a subdivision or a plat.
Yeah.
You're on a country road. Yeah.
Robert left the house in his truck around 9:15, and he told his sister that he'd be back later. He was going to swing by his grandparents' house to work in their yard a little bit, and then he was going to visit a friend that lived nearby. When Robert returned home around 11:45 a.m., he pulled his truck into the garage and he did a little bit of work on the engine because it had been giving him some problems earlier that day.
Back then you could work on things like that.
Well, yeah, they weren't all computerized.
Yeah.
Now you got to plug something in to even tell you what's wrong.
You can do more damage by looking at it than you would if you just took it into someplace.
No doubt. But Robert soon noticed that the door from the garage leading into the house was open. And he thought that was very strange because he knew he shut it when he left home that morning. He called out for his little sister and he heard a very quiet, very faint reply for help. So he started tearing through the house, trying to locate her, and he pretty quickly found her lying naked, sprawled out, partially on the living room couch and partially on the floor. Her face appeared to have been badly beaten. It was black and blue, very bloody. Robert went to use the phone, but it wasn't working. So he ran next door to the neighbors to call EMS and the police. He then called both of his parents and told them that they needed to get home right away. And Gibbs, much like in the first case that we talked about, right? Parents are driving down the street. Now they already know something's wrong. But as they approach their house, they see police, they see EMS, they got to be scared out of their wits. But then they saw the coroner.
Yeah, that's not a good sight to see.
No, because Linda had died. She was shot in the head 3 times by a .22 caliber handgun. It was later confirmed she had been sexually assaulted as well. Police found the family dog, a Dalmatian, locked in the basement. And when they examined the dog, they found that he had a muddy footprint on him from where he was kicked in the stomach.
The Dalmatians are normally pretty protective dogs. So maybe whoever did this kicked the dog or stomped on the dog to get control and put him in the basement, maybe.
Well, I think that's a good theory.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of dogs are very protective, especially of children. I think some dogs just know. They sense.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
Evil. And they know that this person is doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And I think you find that in a lot of cases where perpetrators either know there's a dog in the house or they find out that there's a dog in the house once they're inside, and they know they have to deal with that dog because there's a risk there and they have to eliminate that risk.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes perpetrators kill dogs. It does seem as though maybe the dog was hurt, but not killed.
Right.
And put into the basement. Linda Sue Dearth was born on November 21st, 1959, to Dwayne and Betty. And we mentioned it. She had two older brothers, Robert and Maurice. Linda was a student council member. She played the clarinet in her junior high school band. She was an active Girl Scout, and she helped teach little children at her church's Sunday school.
And she loved to do tap dance, and she took a lot of other dance classes as well.
And she was an animal lover. She loved all animals, especially dogs and cats. Linda was a daddy's girl, but she was also her mom's best friend.
Well, I bet her mom had two boys before she finally had Linda, so I'm sure she was very excited to finally have a girl.
Her parents told the press days later that her favorite song was Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and it was a song that she listened to quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a catchy tune back in the day.
Yeah, it was. Linda was eventually laid to rest in Arlington Cemetery in Brookville, Ohio. All right, now let's jump back to the investigation. As investigators were checking the house, they didn't see any forced entry. So they wondered whether Linda knew her attacker or if possibly the door was just left unlocked.
Which was probable at that time. Back in the early 70s, you didn't worry about too much. You could leave your front door unlocked.
Well, especially where they live.
Out in the country, yeah. I mean, you would hear somebody coming down the driveway before you'd have to worry about something.
Yeah, we've talked about that in quite a few episodes. Investigators did find a shell casing from the gun used in the murder, but they were stumped, Gibbs. I mean, I think, first of all, they couldn't figure out why anyone would want to harm this 13-year-old girl.
Yeah, in that area of town where because I grew up really close to that. And I probably at that time I was 7 years old or going to be 7. You didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. That's not the kind of things you heard about. Just crime was not an issue there.
No, not in that area. The other thing that investigators couldn't figure out was that there was nothing missing from the home. So why did this little girl need to be killed?
Yeah. Was it just for the sexual assault and then they decided she needed to be killed so she couldn't identify them later?
Well, I think that's why investigators were stumped. Right? Sexual assault is horrible.
Yeah.
But they probably also knew that it could have been done and then the perpetrator could have fled.
Yeah.
The perpetrator didn't have to kill her. So why did it happen?
And it wouldn't have happened if she would have been in school that day. Think about that. She was home that day because of the president's funeral. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been home anyway. Did the perpetrator know that she would be home that day because of the president's funeral? Because really, if it was any other day, she wouldn't have been there.
No, I think there's something to that. You have to ask those types of questions. Did whoever perpetrated this crime know the fact that she would be home? But it wasn't just her, right? Her older brother was scheduled to be home as well. So then you have to ask the question, did the perpetrator somehow know that her brother was scheduled to leave her alone? And did this person know them to the point where she could have identified him by name later on?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then that would explain why the person had to take the extra step of actually murdering this girl.
Right.
All questions, right, that police have to look into. The Montgomery County Crime Lab was tasked with collecting DNA at the site, which they did back then. There wasn't a whole lot that they could do with it as far as it related to the actual DNA.
Right.
They analyzed fibers but they saved it all. The ballistic team matched the bullets found in Linda's skull and the shell casings found near her body to the bullet and shell casings found in the murder case of Gloria Buck. So this is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Right? As investigators confirmed, both victims were shot with the same gun. So now they know whoever killed Gloria and her children waited 12 days and then killed Linda. But I think the police, press, and the public realized two things. Number one, they charged the wrong person for the Buck family triple murders. And number two, there's still a killer on the loose in our community.
It had to be scary. I don't remember at that time. I mean, I was too young, but I would think that that had to be some pretty scary times to think about. Man, we got 4 people, 3 of them, kids that have been murdered. What is going on here?
Well, I'll say this. It would be scary today. It would make the news. It would, cause people to be frightened. But you kind of talked about it, right? The 70s was a different time, especially in the area that we're talking about right now. Very rural, low crime rate. It's just not something that people really worried about. So to have all of this stuff happen in less than 2 weeks, it would be panic inducing.
Yeah.
Because it just didn't happen. People were not used to it.
I know that the local sheriff and his lead investigators, they told the press and the community that these killings were isolated, and they tried to assure the community they didn't need to worry. But I don't know. If this was today and I heard that, I would be worried.
I also think it's a tough statement to sell.
Oh,
you don't need to worry, even though there's a killer on the loose.
Yeah.
Who has killed 4 people in less than 2 weeks. Yeah, worry. Lock your doors, guard your children. I think it's a tough statement to sell. You don't need to worry. So, I mentioned the fact that police, press, public kind of realized that, okay, how could Patty Brown have been the killer in the Buck case and then also killed Linda? Because she's locked up.
Exactly.
She's in juvenile detention. But not everyone in the police felt that way. There was a lead investigator on the case that had a theory that Patty Brown either took the gun out of the gun cabinet at the Buck home and shot Gloria, and then later she got rid of the gun somehow. Then the person who killed Linda either found the gun or bought it from someone who found it and used it in that murder.
It's a lot of ifs, ands, maybe buts, right?
It's a quantum leap.
Yeah.
It really is. When you think about, how flimsy the case was anyway.
Sure.
Against this 17-year-old girl, Patty Brown. And then this information comes out that kind of seems to prove that there's really no way she could be involved.
Yeah.
But you're trying to weave it so that she could still be involved.
Yeah, you're trying to massage this so that you can continue on and get a conviction.
Right. And that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The prosecution, they didn't stop. It's not like they just let Patty Brown out and said, okay, we know you didn't do it. They kind of subscribed to this theory. And we're going to move ahead with the trial of Patty Brown. But her public defender, Richard Dodge, who later became one of Montgomery County's longest seated judges, pointed out that the prosecution had no evidence that Patty did this, and they used some dirty tactics to get Jenny to agree with what they told her happened that afternoon. They made her sign sworn statements that they themselves had prepared.
I think we've seen this tactic used in some other cases.
I think we've seen it quite often in a number of wrongful convictions.
Yeah.
This is exactly how you get a wrongful conviction. It's one of the ways, at least.
Yeah.
Dodge further said that police interrogated Patty for hours and hours. They wouldn't give her any breaks. I mean, it got so bad that at one point she broke out in hives.
Yeah, they said her whole left eye swelled up and closed because the hives were so bad. And the investigator said, no, she was just crying so much her eyes did that.
Dodge went on during the trial to show how all the evidence that the police did have pointed everywhere but to Patty Brown.
Yeah. Again, we've seen that where they waste so much time locked in on this person because they need to get something on paper to calm the community and everybody else, instead of really, like, you knew immediately when you read some of this material out there in the newspaper
that it didn't sound right.
It didn't sound right.
No.
You know?
And I think the other thing we've seen is how investigators sometimes have taken evidence that they know doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
And they massage it and they kind of mold it to try to make it fit their narrative, when it's really supposed to be the other way around, right? The evidence is supposed to lead you in the direction of the right suspect. You're not supposed to mold the evidence to make it fit a suspect that you already have.
Yeah.
And I think that's the danger. And I think that's what happened in this case. Dodge pointed out that the gun that was used to kill Gloria Buck was used just 12 days later to shoot Linda Dearth about 12 miles away. So very doubtful that during that short amount of time, it's found or bought by a person who now wants to commit another crime.
Right.
Again, you're really making a leap to come up with that theory and say it fits.
It's a big stretch.
It really is.
Really big stretch in this community at that time, because you didn't have a lot of crime. I mean, if you had a lot of crime, it happened all the time, maybe you could try to even...
Oh, right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but this is such a rare occurrence at that time. I don't see how you could really sell that at all.
No, you have two killers, and one of them finds a gun that was used in a murder 12 days ago.
Yeah.
And now commits another murder. It's fanciful.
Exactly.
It really is. Dodge pointed out that police had a person of interest in the Buck murders early on. He found it in the case files. This was a military vet in the area that investigators suspected fairly early on, but then quickly shifted to Patty. And it's almost as though they just dropped this guy.
Yeah.
And, as Dodge pointed out, this guy was a much better fit than Patty was. He had, a criminal history. He had things that probably would have fit the profile of this killer.
So why not put your resources, time, energy on that instead of this 17-year-old girl? Because somehow you were able to get her 12-year-old sister to sign a sworn statement, and that's what you're basing this all on.
Well, and to me, even if they, for whatever reason, thought Patty Brown had something to do with it, why drop entirely this suspect? Why not continue to, investigate him, vet him, and just see where it leads? But that's the tunnel vision thing that you were talking about. That's what happens. Everything else and everyone else just kind of goes by the wayside. And I think Dodge just hammered home the message that how can Patty be the killer of the Bucks when the same gun that killed them was used, just 12 days later to murder Linda? Well, she obviously couldn't have murdered Linda. She's sitting in a juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
On May 7th, 1973, after spending 103 days locked up and going through this trial, Patty Brown was set free. During this same time, investigators found another link between the two crimes, and it was the Trading Post ads. And we talked about them in each one of these cases.
Yeah.
The Bucks placed a TV for sale ad, and Robert Dearth placed an ad to sell his Chevy Bel Air. So investigators started to believe that possibly the killer could have been someone who searched the Trading Post for a target and then attacked the victims and murdered them. Gloria and her children were stabbed and cut. Gloria was also beaten with a baseball bat, and she was shot. The coroner never mentioned sexual assault. Linda was shot 3 times in her head, and she was sexually assaulted. So I think investigators were torn. First, they had the whole Patty Brown fiasco.
Right.
But now they're past that point, but they're still torn. They have these two cases. that occurred within 12 days of each other. They know that the same gun was used. Odds would lead you to believe that all of these murders were committed by the same killer, but they couldn't discount the idea that it was two different killers. You had Jack Buck's stolen Ruger that was used to shoot Gloria. We talked about it, Gibbs. Pretty far-fetched to think that another person, random person, not connected with the Buck murder, either found it or bought it and used it to kill Linda. But technically, it could have happened that way. As far-fetched as I think it is,
right,
it could have happened. I still don't believe it did.
No, I don't believe so either. But percentage-wise, there's a small percentage.
It's a very small percentage. So after Patty's release, investigators had 4 persons of interest that they looked at, but they could never put enough evidence together to charge any of them. Jack Buck had an extremely hard time in dealing with the murder of his family, as anyone would, Gibbs.
I can't even imagine.
He eventually returned to his hometown of Tip City and married. He always told people that he just wanted to know why someone had to kill his family. But he knew to get that answer, investigators would need to find the right suspect. And I think another sad part of this case, Gibbs, is that Jack never got the answer he was looking for. You know, he's now deceased.
Yeah.
So he died never knowing why someone murdered his family and who it was.
And I'd want to know, why did you have to kill my family? What did you need, or what did we do to you that was so bad that you had to do that?
And I do think it's something that would haunt you every day for the rest of your life. Linda's parents took her murder extremely hard as well. Again, I don't know what parent wouldn't.
Yeah. They tried to replace those feelings of her being lost by adopting another little girl, a 7-year-old girl, but they just could never get over her death. And it was so hard on them that they eventually divorced. And for a very long period of time, they just didn't communicate anymore. Unless they were at a family event, they just didn't speak. It was just too hard. And both of them moved out of the state. They remarried and they moved on with their lives. Richard also moved away. I think he moved down to Florida. And, the memory of his sister's murder haunts him till today. He too, just like Jack, wants to know, why'd you have to kill my sister?
And I could see how it would really haunt him as well, right? He's home with his sister that day. He has some errands to run.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything wrong. But while he's gone, his sister is sexually assaulted and murdered. I imagine that would always be in the back of his mind.
Yeah.
What if I didn't leave?
Exactly.
Could I have stopped it?
Could have been there to protect her.
Yeah. That would be very tough to live with.
Now, a little strange twist of fate. Dwayne and Betty, we said they remarried. Both of them would become widowed. And they would meet again at their adopted daughter's wedding, fall back in love. And they remarried, I think in 1987. And are still married.
Yeah, it does seem strange to me that it would happen that way.
Yeah.
That they would end up back together and reunite, rekindle the relationship that they once had.
And maybe they just needed some time to go by.
Yeah, maybe. Now, we talked about DNA earlier in the episode. I really think that's where, the family's hopes lie. The Buck family, the Dearth family, their hopes lie with the DNA technology advancements of today and maybe even the future, that maybe some of the DNA that was recovered from the crime scenes can be used to help find the killer or killers.
Yeah.
Patty Brown and her family sued both the police and the government for wrongful arrest and imprisonment. They sued for $1.35 million, but they lost their suit and they received a check for $250.
What a slap.
And that check was for the replacement of her clothing that was destroyed during her arrest and in investigation.
Yeah. I mean, that's a slap.
It is.
You know, we put you in prison, detention for 100 and some days. Sorry, you can return home now. I mean,
yeah, I mean, she didn't spend 17 years, 30 years of her life like many people have in wrongful convictions, but you can't discount what happened to her.
mm-mm.
This was a 17-year-old girl who, by everything that we read, had some type of mental disability. She was imprisoned for 100 and some days. She had to go through the trial. She was labeled a murderer.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that is traumatic.
And they used her little sister
against her.
Yeah.
If you have any information regarding these murders, please contact the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office at 937-225-4072. So Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, 4 very tragic deaths. We say this a lot, but hopefully something does come out from continued DNA testing.
Yeah.
We do know that it has been tested twice so far with no results, but maybe one day, it'll get a hit.
Yeah.
To me, that just means that whoever the DNA belongs to is not in any of the systems.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, the other thing that I like to talk about is the whole familial, trying to work that angle. And maybe that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
Doing something like what they did with the Golden State Killer. And they've done actually in a number of cases recently.
And that might be the better way, knowing that it's been 47 years since this occurred.
Yeah. I mean, if the person's not in the database by now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that they would slip up and, get arrested or do something. It's also possible that they're no longer alive, though.
And that could be the bigger possibility here, right?
Yeah, and they're never going to show up in a database because they're gone.
Yeah.
Now, you could figure it out. You won't be able to do anything to them.
Right.
But there's a chance that you could figure it out through some of these other DNA testing methods. But that's it. That's the unsolved triple murder of the Buck family, Gloria, Tracy, and Scott, and the murder of Linda Dearth. Gibbs, we've got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. It's Cassie again from Georgia. I called you guys a week or so ago, but I felt like I needed to call you guys back with a case suggestion. The case is about Justin Gaines. He was like a teenager who disappeared in 2007, I think, from a local nightclub that was really popular here in Georgia at the time. It's still unsolved. There is literally no information that I can find other than what I found when it first came out. So I just thought it would be interesting to hear you guys' take on it, see what you could dig up. I haven't heard it on any of the other podcasts that I listen to about true crime, so I wanted to give you guys the first opportunity to cover it. Also, just want to let you guys know that I am Team Mike because I love you both, and you can't have Gibby without Fergie. You can't have Fergie without Gibby. So stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Or like a Reese peanut butter cup.
Can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that suggestion. There may be a reason why nobody else has ever covered it, and it might lie in her one statement.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anything else on it. Sometimes for whatever reason, Gibbs, and I know you and I have discussed this before, some cases get covered extensively.
Yeah.
And then others,
Just
it's
not so
like
much.
you find a blurb here or there and then never anything on it again. It's just not enough to put together an episode. Now, it might be possible to pair it with something else and do it that way.
Yeah, sometimes investigators are still working on it. They just don't put a lot of information out to the press.
Yeah, so the press have nothing to report because there's nothing new that's happened. And
Exactly.
Hi, my name's Letty from Memphis, Tennessee. I was calling to thank you guys. I really appreciate listening to this during the quarantine. It's really kept me entertained while I'm working from home. I also wanted to mention the Asia story, that the young girl that's still missing. Did they ever look to see who got the book from the library, the book that they found in her backpack? Is she the one that checked it out? It's just a thought. I was wondering if she actually checked it out or another child did. Well, thank you again so much for everything you do. You guys have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, so that's the case down in Charlotte, the unsolved that we did. And I know they looked into that, and another child did not check it out. It was Asia that did that.
Well, good. I'm glad you were able to answer her question.
I try to do that now and then.
Hey, this is Dispatcher Lisa, and I just listened to TCAT Unsolved, and great podcast, by the way, but there's one thing that really annoys me, and it is dark in color. Now, is that as opposed to dark in size or dark in number? Just wondering. Anyway, stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right. Dispatcher Lisa has got me confused on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Dark in color? I mean, that sounds like something maybe I would say.
So the car was dark in color.
Right.
On the exterior.
Do you think that sounds strange?
Dark in color.
That sounds like a saying that I have said multiple times.
But maybe from a dispatcher.
Dark in color.
Instead of saying.
Maybe I think what she's saying is, what else could it be? If it's dark, you're automatically talking about color as opposed to size, or I think that's what she's saying.
Yeah.
And that I do get.
I gotcha.
I still am not probably going to continue to use that phrase though.
Yeah.
But it will bug Lisa. Dark. I do get what she's saying now. And it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, it
took me a minute though, because I'm slow.
I gotcha.
Thanks, Lisa.
Hi, guys. This is Marty Hatcher. I'm calling from High Point, North Carolina. And I was going to thank you for taking my suggestion and covering the Rhonda Henson case. I grew up in Valdez, North Carolina, and I was excited that you got in there and covered that case, because it's something that has stuck with me for many, many years now. I wish it was solved, but thank you for covering it. Bye.
Well, thank you. And we wish it was solved as well. We get a lot of good suggestions.
We do.
And some are for cases that, are very popular and obviously we have on the list, but every now and then we get some that we've never heard of and we look into them. And I think that's probably what happened in this case. Yeah. You took a look at it and you were like, oh yeah, we've got to do this case. But we appreciate all suggestions, and we take a lot of the cases that we do from suggestions that we get from listeners.
Absolutely.
All right, Gibbs, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.